Hello everybody, welcome back to another report card video. This is Legion, and today we're going to be talking about bounty hunters. In this video we're going to cover all the bounty hunters. I'm not going to look at them specifically in Rebels or Empire. I'm just going to give them a general grade because for the most part I think they're fine in either faction. Plus most of them belong to the Empire anyways. So very excited about these guys as a little intro. I think they're super strong right now. Been playing a lot of them recently as well, so think I've got some good insight to offer from playing against so many of these dudes and also playing with all the different options. And thankfully there are a bunch of options for bounty hunters. So I think now is the time, more so than ever, to give up on your lightsabers and start going into the more gruesome aspects of Star Wars. So once again, grading system, you guys feel free to pause and check out how I go about processing the grades. So we're going to start off with an absolute banger of a bounty hunter, and that's going to be Boba Fett. He's got Jump 2, Arsenal 2, Bounty, Impervious, Independent Aim or Dodge, Sharp 2, 5 Health, Surging to Defend, Surge to Crit, 3 Courage. He's got Boot Spikes, his Rockets at range 1 to 2 with Versatile and Impact 1, and his Carbine at range 3. I give Boba an A+, 100%. Great character in Star Wars thematically, and I love that he's super good right now. I really don't think he's OP per se. Like, I don't think he's busted or anything like that. I just think he's really good. I think he's actually a great example of what we should be looking for in terms of a good unit without really saying, oh, they're only good because they're overvalued, they're overthinged, or they need to be nerfed in some aspect. I think he's a good unit in that sense. And maybe he does deserve a little bit of a nerf on the contrary, but in my personal opinion, I think he's a great example of an A+ unit. He also has the flame projector, just another gadget he can put on for another 5 points. But looking at Boba, we can start talking about his pros and his cons. First off, he's fast, speed 3, jump 2. He's going to get around the map really good. Climb actually makes this even better for him. I know that that's maybe wait, why would that matter? But being able to climb down from a building after jumping onto it for whatever reason is something that I've been seeing people do a lot, and something that's really valuable on these jump characters that sometimes can get stuck on top of things. He's Surge Crit, he's extremely versatile, he has amazing command cards, and he's a big time playmaker. And on top of all of this, you can put some upgrades on him and make him expensive, but he's cheap. He just comes in at 120 points for a unit that I think is fine as is without any upgrades. Cons, he's 5 HP, he can absolutely blank out on a big hit and just die, which is bad. And then more importantly, he can be tied up in melee, but even with that con, I think he has plenty of tools to make the most out of that situation or even get out of that situation. For upgrades, before we move on to his cards, I usually do up close and personal, situational awareness, comms relay, and then the flame projector. You can even do something like recon intel for that last one to kind of position him up faster. But just some examples, you can definitely do a ton of different upgrades on Boba or none at all. But I think comms relay is definitely the most prominent one out of those to get independent aim or dodge. And more importantly, give that order to something like a shore trooper who can coordinate to a mortar, who can then fire support into Boba's already great sharpshooter 2 shot and add some more dice to that, especially if he's at something like range 2. Sharpshooter 2 is just so great right now, and I know we've talked about some characters that do have access to it, but Boba has access to it and more dice, and a faction that can fire support in, heck, Rebels or Empire technically. So, well, not Rebels because you didn't have comm relay on that one, but for Empire is mostly what I'm thinking of in terms of this Boba Fett, because we are going to talk about his cards, all of them. But Whipcord Launcher, amazing card. Free action, choose a unit, 2 mobilized tokens, 2 suppression. This is Boba's get out of jail free card because he can also disengage if it has any immobilized tokens for that turn. It's really going to help you against force users, melee units, anything that may be trying to tie up Boba. It's just like, okay, see you later, bye, and now you're also stuck in the middle of the field. So positioning your Boba correctly can be a huge outcome in terms of someone charging you with something like a force user. You whipcord them, you leave them in the middle of the board, and then you just shoot them off the table. So great element of his playmaking. Civil Man of the Galaxy, not my favorite, but getting marksman, increasing your range of all your weapons, can help you get that flamethrower in range quicker. And then he can also do the speed 1 move, and another unit can do the speed 1 move. I haven't seen this card a ton, and I haven't really seen anyone use it in a way that I'm like, whoa, that's awesome. Plus, you don't really need marksman on Empire Boba, so it's more relevant on the other one, but sure. Making his way in the galaxy, I love this card. Cannot perform attacks, but at the end, he's allowed to do that attack. It also has Impact 1 versatile at the bottom of the card there. 2 reds and a black, melee, and at range 1. Yeah, that card is awesome. I love it. Good turn 6, good turn 2. Just even for the suppression alone, because of those ranged attacks, it can be so valuable. And if you're playing Rebel Boba and you've got tenacity, having 4 red or 3 red dice and a black is crazy enough as is. But it's a great little just bomb that you can pull off, and being able to do 2 3-speed jump 2 moves to get into melee and use that card, it's really not that hard to get a ideal spot to make the most of it. So I think it's very good. Just be careful with it though, because you may find yourself in the middle of an army using this, and then Boba's dead next turn. But going last with this, not a bad idea. Flame projector, nothing really to say about this. You get another flamethrower. Cool. It's not bad or anything like that. It's just you can get one for 5 points and save the card slot for someone else. But I mean, if you want to and you want to have 2 flamethrowers, that's how cool Boba is he has that option. The jetpack rocket seems pretty simple, but it actually has a ton of value. Having a range 3 shot with Arsenal 2 with the 2 black, Pierce 1, and these 3 red can really devastate a unit quickly and efficiently. So, and especially with Impact 2, Surge to Crit, like you can do this against vehicles, troopers, anything. This card can absolutely wipe out a unit out of nowhere from really far with Sharpshooter 2. So this card is definitely a threat, but it is sometimes competing for this next card, which is Rule with Respect. This card is absolutely amazing. While Boba has an order, everyone at range 1 gets an extra black dice if they're the ones attacking. So no fire supporting units get it, but everyone else does. And you can give 2 orders out with it as well. So I don't know why Boba turns into a commander for a turn, but this card alone is fine. Like Whipcord Launcher is awesome. Making his way in the galaxy, awesome. Rule with Respect, amazing. Amazing card. Adding an extra dice to things like snipers, range 4 guns, those little plink damage weapons is no joke. And most importantly, Boba also gets this black dice during his activation. The only downside of this is he needs to have the face-up order token as long as possible to get the most out of this, so just be careful about the ranges you're at from your opponent, because if you're trying to get the most out of it, your opponent may start focusing Boba to get you to do something with him. But for the most part, you can easily build a list around just this card. So I think Boba's awesome. He has a ton of playmaking. He's got a great faction in Empire to be able to fire support stuff and add more to it. Snipers, Bossk, getting another black dice from this, whoever. It doesn't matter. Okay, Boba's awesome. If you love the character, you're going to love playing him in Legion as well. So highly recommend Boba as a bounty hunter. I think he's a big part of the meta of Empire that doesn't involve Blizzard Force, so definitely check him out. Bossk. Bounty, Enrage 3, Independent Surge 2, Regenerate 3, Scale, 7 health, no surging, 2 courage, Surge to Crit, Range 4, Mortar Rifle with Pierce 1 and Suppressive, and then Frenzy with a little rainbow there, Pierce 1. I love Bossk. I think I don't want to say he's the most simple bounty hunter in terms of how to play him, but I think after you get in a couple games in with him, you'll understand, oh, if I just stay at range 4, it's going to be really hard to kill Bossk. And he's just a glass cannon. At the end of the day, he's a glass cannon, range 4, suppressive, pierce, and then regen, so you're taking, shots at range 4 back. It's like, oh no, I took 2 wounds that round. Regenerate, oh, I got 1 back at 6 health. Or maybe your surge from independent gets spent and you don't even take a damage. He really also only needs 1 command card. We'll talk about that later, but that's actually one of my favorite parts about Bossk, is he can just kind of not have any orders or cards in your deck besides that one, and have the rest for whatever. He's also super cheap. I think he's the most cost-efficient bounty hunter out of all of them. You can put him in a lot of lists, too. Cons, he can die quick. Like, if you're moving into range 3 with Bossk, or more likely, they're moving into range 3 of you, Some big dice pulls, some good fire supports can see Bossk die in one shot, but that can be said for a lot of characters or a lot of things in the game, but Bossk definitely kind of wants to stay at that juicy range 4 spot to avoid dying in one shot and things like that. Scale also got a little bit of a nerf, so climb is great and all, but that does kind of affect him a little bit. The best way to describe Bossk, in my opinion, is a slot machine. With those 4 white dice and 1 red, you are going to roll some dice sometimes because you don't have Sharpshooter 1 or anything. You're looking for crits, and because you're looking for crits, it feels like a slot machine. When you're playing a slot machine, the more coins you can put into it, the better chances you have of maybe winning something. And those coins are going to be aims in this case. The more aims you can get on Bossk, the more you can completely decimate opponents' armies because you're rolling 5 crits every time that you're shooting with Bossk, and that's devastating, especially on top of Pierce 1 and Suppressive. So sometimes when you don't have access to those aims, and maybe you only have like 1 or 0, you might just miss. At least you'll have Suppressive in there, because I'm sure you'll get at least a hit, but we're really looking for crits with Bossk. The melee thing is fine. I don't think he wants to be in melee for the most part, but it's just nice that he has the option, because not everyone gets a free charge after they're wounded so much with Pierce 1. Like that melee attack's no joke. But for the most part, we want Bossk to sit at the back of the map and just shoot stuff off the board. In terms of his upgrades, I do Hunter, Precision Scopes, done. I think that's pretty much the standard way to run Bossk no matter what. If you wanted to use the other training slot, I guess you could consider Tenacity, but maybe more something like Offensive Push would be nice to generate another aim. Looking at his cards, Merciless Munitions, he gets a bomb, can throw it at range 1, does a little speed 1 move to get away. They do get a poison token if they are affected by it. Surges to crit, red, black, blast. Actually a pretty decent little bomb, especially against troopers with that poison. For the most part, how I understand it is you actually get the poison no matter what. So like if you hit a really hard target like Anakin and he just blocks them both, he still gets a poison token. So you're kind of guaranteeing yourself a damage no matter what, which is really nice. The only problem with this is we just talked about we like to keep Bossk at range 4, so this is way more of a defensive card and can be super situational in terms of who you're playing and what kind of army they have. So don't need it, but if you want it, go for it. I don't think it's bad. The 2-pip, on the other hand, is the card I'm talking about. You absolutely want to just auto-include this card. You can just perform 2 attacks, and that's great. When we're already a gambling machine, let's pull the lever twice, right? Especially if we can generate aims from things like officers, B1s handing out with electro binoculars, like whatever the situation is, getting to shoot twice is good enough. Activating Hunter twice, for instance, on the same target, it just increases his damage output times 2. And that's really good with this character. Also, handing out Force Suppression is no joke. Also, taking the 1 wound to perform a free move action, absolutely. Another thing is it's an action, so you can even do things like melee with that, or activate charge with that. But taking 1 wound to like pop out from behind a building, shoot twice, or rather shoot twice, then take a wound to get behind a building after you get something like Bounty is amazing. So that card, like triple thumbs up. It's what makes Bossk so good in the first place, just this card alone. Lying in wait, you get Sharpshooter 1. After an enemy activates, Bossk gets aim token. This is the I don't want to be a slot machine anymore. I would rather just be a guaranteed 5 crits. Not always the case, but if you're waiting to go last with Bossk, this is the card to play because you can just get 9, 10, 8 aims and then pop out from behind cover and shoot something, and hopefully after 8 aims you're getting a decent amount of crits, and especially with Sharpshooter 1, but that part I don't think really matters as much. Fine card, but I just think there's a lot of lists that Bossk plays in which you can use someone else's 3-pip. So, very nice. The reason Bossk doesn't get an A+ for me is just because he can be a little bit easier to kill, and sometimes if you don't have the kind of right list or the right things surrounding him to support him, I think that he actually falls a little bit short. So I do think you kind of need to not necessarily build a list around him, but bring a thing or two to get him those aims or get him those things to help him. But even just like fire supporting a mortar with Bossk is it's devastating, so there's plenty to be said, and if you wanted to make Bossk an A+, go for it. I would not disagree. Next up is Cad Bane. He's got Jump 1, Bounty, Danger Sense 3, Independent Dodge 2, Sharpshooter 1, Steady, 6 health, 3 courage. surge to crit, and to defend with white dice. Martial arts is 3 black. The blaster pistols are 4 black, pierce 1 at range 2. He is 105 points off the get-go. Cad Bane is a playmaker to the T. He's probably arguably the biggest playmaker out of all the bounty hunters. He's actually really tricky to kill. Out of all the bounty hunters I've played against, I find him to actually be the hardest one to kill. Yes, I know he doesn't have Mandalorian saves, but dodges for days if you have the right type of setup, which we'll talk about. And I don't even know if you have to do it the way I do it. Suppression gimmicks, Danger Sense 3, Uncanny Look on his 1 pip, just make that annoying as well. And then Steady allows you to do a lot of really good positioning with him to stay out of line of sight, pop out, shoot, get back in. Classic Steady shenanigans, and with every other one of his defensive tricks in terms of dodges and danger sense, it's very hard to kill Cad Bane. He's range 2. You guys know how I feel about that. Not necessarily a bad thing, and I think Cad is probably the most equipped to be in that range. Also, I think he wants to give up his order. I think Comms Relay is even more important on Cad Bane. That independent dodge too is just so strong and so good. Especially if you're playing him in droids, like, yeah, let's do that every time. Empire, yes, I get it. Order control may be bad on him, and because of that, that's kind of why he gets an A-, is I think he wants to have those 2 dodges as many turns as possible, and his order control may actually not be that great. But Electro Gauntlets is probably the reason Cad Bane might actually be my favorite bounty hunter out of all of them. I like using these bounty hunters to kind of outplay things like force users or things that just cost more, and I think Cad Bane has the most options for that in terms of things getting into melee with him. So range 2 doesn't feel as bad when something's charging him because he's got Electro Gauntlets, which allows for Immobilize 3, allows him to leave engagement even while the card is exhausted. So pretty good. The only downside of that is you actually have to do a wound, so if someone just rolls 3-4 paint, too bad. In terms of upgrades, I like to run him with situational awareness and up close and personal, but I totally understand if you don't want to play 8 points or up close and personal, so you can definitely just do duck and cover and make sure you're activating danger sense as much as possible. Comms Relay, yup. You can do like cash dodge. Electro Gauntlets I think is kind of a given on him. I think you should always auto include that and just pretend Cad Bane costs 115 points from the get-go. And you can actually do something like smoke grenades with Cad Bane. I think that's actually pretty good with him, but definitely don't have to. Card-wise, I think Cad Bane has some really cool cards. 1 pip, Uncanny Look 2 on top of Danger Sense. Yeah. During his activation, he can perform 2 attacks. That's really nice and easy with Steady. One of my favorite combos is to be in melee with a Force user. Cad Bane survives because he's got like 3 dodges going on. Melees, hopefully does a wound with the Electro Gauntlets, gets an Immobilize. First attack. Second attack is me disengaging with the speed 2 move and then shooting. It's like, haha, you're stuck there in the middle of the map, and I just attacked you twice. A lot of fun, love it. It's just one of those reasons I like Cad Bane so much. I'm in control. I think this card's a little underrated. At his start of his activation or the end, he may transfer any number of suppression to any number of troopers at range 1 to 2. Everyone that gets a suppression in this way gains 1 Immobilize token. This also stacks with his Electro Gauntlets, which allows him to disengage even while that's not being used, essentially giving you 2 different options for disengaging with any type of unit that you're engaged with. So I really like this card a lot. So I make the rules now. This is probably my favorite card actually, even though it's arguably the worst one of the 3. You have 2 options. You can either play normal, which is you place 1 Cad Bane token within range 1 of him, and outside of range 1 of all enemy units, be any token you want. So divulging it allows you to place all 3 of them at outside of range 1 of any deployment zone, and then you don't deploy Cad Bane, and the card also must be selected during round 1. There's a bomb, there's a teleport essentially, and a blank. I love this card so much because it's such a unique aspect of Legion. It's just such a mind game too, and I think this card alone is why Cad Bane kind of stands out for me, is I just love watching my opponent really consider moving a certain way or going to a certain position because they're like, oh crap, is that a bomb or is that Cad Bane? I don't know. It's just so fun, and then they spent 3 turns avoiding it, and it turns out to be Smoke and Mirrors, the blank one. So it's a lot of fun. It's also a turn, a lot of potential for getting Cad Bane in the right places. Things like Recover the Supply became a little bit more of a, I'm not going to say a nuance objective, but one that people may reconsider just because you can't scout and touch the boxes from the get-go anymore. Same rules apply with this card, but put the token on the box. Round 2, you reveal Cad Bane, you pick up the box, you leave, and you're already there. On something like Long March, that can be really hard to deal with as your opponent, especially if Cad Bane's got like 4 dodges going on. So, pretty cool. I like this card a lot. The bomb's also super good at Impact 2, Suppressive, Surge to Crit, and Blast. It's very nice, especially for something that you're just kind of putting on the table for a majority of things. But I've definitely seen some play where like an airspeeder will fly over the bomb because it's just if you're at range 1, you activate it. Great, flips over, doesn't even hit the airspeeder, and you kind of waste it. So, whatevs, but I love these cards. I think Cad Bane fits perfectly in terms of the character and the style, so really cool. Got the Mando up next. Arsenal 2, Bounty, Impervious, Independent Aim, and Dodge. Tactical 1, 5 health, 3 courage, Surge to Crit, Mando saves, the Knife, Lethal 1, Pistol, Lethal 1, Long Shot 1, Versatile. And then he's got a bunch of upgrades. He's got another Flamer with Spray and Suppressive and Blast. He's got the Jetpack, which just gives him, jump 2. Then he has 2 weapon options, one being the Amban Rifle with Immobilize 2 and Suppressive, and it has a pretty special little ability to where you use both your actions to do a speed 1 move, choose an enemy unit in line of sight, and then roll 1 red dice. If it's a hit or a crit, the chosen unit suffers 1 wound and gains 1 suppression. So giving out both your actions to potentially do an auto wound and suppression is nice. Then the 3 black and melee as well is also good. Beskar Spitter, 2 red and a black, Duelist, Pierce 1, immune to Pierce if you spend a dodge. So pretty cool. I know a lot of people love this character right now too, so very happy for Rebels to also kind of get a true bounty hunter. Pros, he creates chaos and does so fast. I don't know if I want to say efficiently, but I think he can do it very efficiently against certain lists. We'll come back to that. Token generation, he's going to have a lot of tokens from his independent, tactical. He's going to have the aims he needs to activate lethal, long shot, whatever he needs to do for the most part. Arsenal 2 allows for a lot of versatility in terms of choosing whatever dice you're looking to roll. Like, oh, do I need to shoot something? Do I need to dump all these dice into melee? It's like, okay, I can use my spear and my knife in melee. I can use my spear and the flamethrower. I can use my spear and the pistol and versatile. And because of versatility on the pistol, it allows him to shoot things while also doing melee. So you have lots of choices to consider in terms of target priority and things you want to do damage to. So that is very nice in terms of, okay, I'm in the middle of this army. What do I want to shoot? Also think he can do that super easy with his 1 pip and the jetpack. I think it's very easy for Mando to get where he wants to be. And then the problems start to come out. He's not as much of a playmaker. He's just a straight up bruiser. He doesn't have like a card or a thing I can show you where I'm like, oh yeah, this is what makes him really dangerous against this thing. Like, no, he's just got some good dice pools that can really mess stuff up. But he can also be super expensive. Like, I think he comes up to like 150 once you start piling all these upgrades on. And I think he gets countered hard in melee at times, especially against things like a Force User. It's like you dive into the back lines. Maybe you got like some clone troopers and you're using Pierce on your spear, you're doing a flamethrower with your pistol on another squad, and you're wiping out a full phase 2 unit. It's like, yeah, this is awesome. And then you get force pulled out of the melee, or maybe the Jedi goes into you, charges you, swings at you, does a wound or 2, force pulls you out of the melee, and then the rest of the turn you just get shot up. And that's my biggest thing about Mando is he wants to be in the melee. He wants to be in the bruiser range, the range 2, the melee engagement, but he doesn't have any tools to get out of that if he needs to do something else or if he needs to get somewhere or be somewhere. I think because of that, that's what he really struggles with, especially if he gets into melee with something like, I don't know, Magna Guards. They're immune to Pierce, and they're just making saves, and you're making saves, and it's like the whole game, the 110-point unit is tying up your 155-point unit for 4 turns, and you have to ask yourself, was that worth it? So that's my problem, is he just gets stuck. He gets stuck diving in, and then he's like, crap, I didn't finish off that B1 squad, there's 1 left, and now I gotta use this turn, this activation to take care of it. Oh, the objective's moving, it's payload, whatever the situation is, I just feel like that sucks up a lot of his versatility in terms of what he needs to do on his turn. But he's still super cool, and he can really do that bruiser role well. In terms of the pros, like, I think it also is very situational what list he's playing against. Like I said, melee units, force users, I think are really bad for him. But man, if you can get into the back of a gun line that doesn't have those things, I think he can do absolute work, because I think he has some great dice pools and a lot of utility in terms of, like, I need to wipe out the Stormtrooper squad. Flamethrower, spear, Pierce 1. Boom, you're done. Same thing with flamethrower and like range 1 with the shooting with the pistol. Also super good. But that feels situational, and I don't like situational characters because you're going to run into something that you don't want to run into eventually. Cards, though, he gets a dodge and relentless. That's beautiful. That's just what's going to get him into melee quickly and efficiently. With a speed 3 jetpack and jump 2. Yeah. Oh, which brings me to the point. If you're taking upgrades on him, I do tenacity. I completely understand if you don't like these upgrades. These are just kind of my recommendations. Tenacity, situational, comms relay if you want to, prepared supplies, flamethrower, yeah. And then you could do either one. I think the Amban rifle's good. I don't necessarily like his ability too much, but that's going to be really nice in the situations where you're like, darn, that 1 health officer's on the other end of the board, and then all of a sudden you end up with a bounty. That's a great feeling. The Immobilize 2 kind of helps with melee units or force users, not force users, but units that you're engaged with just leaving the melee, so that's really important. Beskar Spear is going to allow you to just be a little bit better in melee in terms of the Pierce 1, and the immune to melee Pierce is definitely better than Impervious when you need it. And this also pairs nicely with the Vibro Knife because you can make it Pierce 2 essentially, which is really good. But this goes well with This Is the Way because it's just the card that's going to get him into melee the most efficiently. You're going to get 2 aims on the way there, hopefully. And then you're also going to kind of get to pick and choose what you want to go into melee with. So that's definitely the pro of Mando, is like, I want to go here, you can probably get there, just because you have so much speed. I like those odds. He gets an aim token, performs an attack action, he can do it against a different unit. This card's also really good because he's got that arsenal too, and he can really utilize all of that at the same time, and you can do some serious damage with this card. So another really good card in my opinion. Whistling Birds, not so much. On paper, you could argue at times like, oh yeah, I just wiped out a full phase 2 unit because I rolled 4 out of 5 white paint. Cool. Do that again. Do it next game, and the next game, and the next game. And then some games you're just not going to get a single kill. So I actually kind of like this card. I actually think it's pretty cool, but I completely understand why some people would not use it just because of the inconsistency. It's just a huge gamble, and it's also taking up an action, and that's if you have 3 units at range 1 that are multiple models. Like, do I really want to use this if I have 2 characters next to me and then maybe 1 4-man squad of something? I don't know about that, but it's still pretty cool. I like this card a lot, but its efficiency leaves much to be desired at times, and then other times you're going to be like, yep, this is the best card ever. IG-11, Armor 1, Gunslinger, Impervious, Programmed, Sharpshooter 1. Programmed, he gets Bounty, AI Aim Attack, and then if he chooses a Commander, he gets Pierce 1. If he chooses a Operative as the Bounty target, he gets Suppressive. 5 Health, 2 Courage, Surge to Hit, 5 Red Melee, a range 3 option with a black and 2 white Pierce 1, and then 2 black and a white at range 4. Pros, he is range 4 Gunslinger, 2 different shots, sharp 1, so that helps with the cover thing. Decent melee, he's cheap, just like Bossk, and then the programming is actually really cool. I love the idea of picking my bounty target, and it gives me something. And this is where I'll kind of talk about the strategy that goes behind IG-11. If you rank this dude higher than me, in your eyes, I understand. I just have not seen a ton of him, but from what I have seen, I think his dice pools are lackluster. I think he can die quickly, and that 3-pip just doesn't really come into play that often, and it kind of just feels like it's eating up one of your command slots. Yeah. Melee's cool, though. That range 4 is awesome. Getting 2 range 4 shots off is good. The only problem I see is the dice pool and Sharpshooter 1. It's like, okay, one of these is probably gone no matter what. Is the white dice going to hit? Do you have an aim to make it hit or make the black dice hit? Like, whatever the situation is, are you actually hitting anything? Because if you do the Pierce 1 on a commander, or use bounty on a commander and get Pierce 1, I think that gun's really dangerous. It's like we could argue that we're killing 2 models every time we shoot. So we aim, range 4, choose 2 different units, roll, get 2 hits. Okay, there's 2 units dead. Okay, now we have to start asking ourselves though, do they have dodges? Do they have whatever it is that keeps them alive? So I don't know. I just feel like a lot of times, yes, it sounds cool to get 2 different Pierce 1 shots off at range 4, but that dice pool's so small that even with an aim sometimes, you're going to roll and you're just only going to get 1 hit. And then it's like, cool thought and all, but the value drastically reduces itself when you're not getting anything out of it. On the other hand, I actually think I like the suppressive version better. In the realm of objective play and how suppression can affect that, I really think that might be IG-11's best bet, is to use the suppressive side of things and just be like 2 range 4 shots at blight cover each. Maybe I get a hit through, maybe I don't care though, because I'm just trying to add suppression, and I think that would be devastating. I think that could actually be really good for him. But I definitely understand if you guys are like, oh yeah, I run him with Hunter, I take an aim, I get 2 aims, I get enough aims on my character here that I can make all 3 of those dice hit as much as possible. My only other problem is he is a bounty hunter, and one of the best parts about bounty hunters is getting the bounty, and I think he's going to struggle the most to get that bounty because he has to pick 2 different targets, and I think 3 dice with Sharpshooter 1 is very rarely going to kill, units that have the bounty keyword or finish them off. Like, they're going to have 1 health, they're going to have to roll bad, they're going to not have any dodges. Like, there's just a lot of situations where you're never going to get bounty on IG-11, and arguably that's why I rank him lower than most. I might even rank him lower eventually. Like, I would probably say, if I saw him more, I think my ultimate conclusion would be like a C, but for now I'm going to give him a B- because I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. In terms of upgrades, Hunter, maybe like comms relay. You could also do like emergency transponder to get an aim a turn. Gear, I guess you could do prepared supplies if you really wanted to. You have to take bounty programming, so too bad, so sad. Card wise, as 1 pip's a nice little bomb. Declares an attack. Everyone at range 1 to 2 of him is getting shot up by whichever gun you choose, which I think is really cool, and it's probably the best feature of IG-11. The question is, are you going to get him into range 1 to 2 without dying? Thoughts? Machine made for killing. He gets 1 aim, demoralize 3, and steady. I actually think that's really good for him. It's going to allow him to do a lot of suppression, especially since we were just talking about the fact that may be his best option. And more importantly, steady. Don't need to talk about that. It's really good. The 3 pip makes me sad. It has to be included no matter what. At the end of his activation, he has 3 or more wounds. He performs an attack with the following weapon: 3 red, 2 black, blast, impact 3, and suppressive. It's not a bad attack by any means, especially since it's just a bomb. So I guess you could really get into the melee of things and just blow up like 5 different units with this. Like, yeah, that's going to be awesome, but that's going to be super situational when that happens, and more importantly, you're finishing off a unit your opponent didn't have to, and for me, that's always like, oh, what if IG-11 would have rolled 4 blocks on the next turn, and I would have got, another turn with him instead of blowing him up. Obviously, this could be more valuable, but it's just the fact that I have to take this card, and I don't think it's that amazing whatsoever. IG-88, Armor 1, Arsenal 2, Bounty, Impervious, Sharpshooter 1, kind of the same thing, except for he surges to crit, and he has Arsenal 2. So he shoots both of his guns. He also has Versatile in that range 3 gun. That's huge for me. Definitely a different melee. Just Rainbow Pierce 1, but still not that bad. I give him a B. I think you could probably even give him a B+ or an A-, depending on time will tell. But I think right now he sits at a B mostly because of his range. He wants to be at range 3. He wants to have those strong dice pulls at range 3 with Arsenal 2, and I think it is super strong. Versatile in the range 3 gun also helps me a lot in terms of if he's ever getting tied up in melee. Like IG-11 gets tied up in melee after playing as 1 pip or something. Yes, he's got a good melee, but if he needs to shoot something else, he's going to have to do a lot of different things to either kill that unit or just disengage and wait till next turn. IG-88 has Versatile, which I just think is always huge in terms of playmaking, and he's also cheap, same cost pretty much. Cons, he's getting into range 3 with 5 health and armor 1. It's not like he's easy to kill by any means, but there's definitely a lot of things in this game that can take him off the board quickly if you're not careful. But when he is in range 3, Pierce 1, 3 black dice, 3 white dice with searching to crit, maybe an aim or 2. I think that's really good. And then you can also be in melee and, shoot out with your versatile weapon, which I think is good as well. In terms of training slot, I'd probably just take Hunter, Comms Relay, Prepared Supplies if you wanted to. This is the biggest thing for me on IG-88 in terms of why I put him over IG-11, because arguably I would say the range 4 Gunslinger is maybe better than Arsenal 2, besides the bounty keyword. But that's exactly why I put him over, is because I'm focused on the bounty keyword. Just the possibility of getting a bounty is what's important to me in terms of deciding between these two guys and most of the bounty hunters. And this one pip emphasizes that so much. Permanent. While IG-88 is performing an attack against a unit that has the bounty keyword, or is the target of a bounty keyword, cannot spend tokens. If IG-88 has wounds equal to or exceeding his threshold, he's not defeated till the start of the end phase. That's a 1-2 punch that will be useful no matter if you play this card first turn because it's permanent or the turn you need it. It's great. you can do a lot with this card, and you can't really play it at the wrong time. It might be nice to save the 1 pip for when you need to go first, but if you want to just make sure IG-88 can't die in 1 turn without getting a shot off, there you go. Just situation 1 that I'll explain why this card is so good is imagine, Vader is on 2 health and he plays Fear and Dead Man. He's got like 5 dodges now, and you're like, dang, I want to get that bounty. IG-88 plays this card. Can't use the surges from like independent or reliable to if he has that. Can't use the dodges to activate deflect to make you take wounds from anything. And then, yeah, it's just one of those situations where it gives you the best chance of getting a bounty. And arguably this card allows IG-88 to be one of the best choices to get a bounty. So, not always going to be the case, especially with this dice, but man, it's scary. You got to really reconsider going into range of IG-88 with any type of bounty target just because of this card. This card alone is kind of what puts IG-88 up there for me. Independent programming, this is just for him, permanent. Every time he gets an order to himself, he gets an aim. I don't really know how I feel about that because he has to issue the order to himself. Otherwise, he gets independent dodge. That makes sense. I mean, he's getting one or the other, so it's not that big of a deal. But, I mean, this card's just meh. You can play it turn 1 and just have it on there if you wanted to generate some more tokens for him, but I don't know. I think there's other lists. You could just take up this 2 pip for something else. Same thing with the other one. It's just Demoralize 3 and Steady because they can both use it. Still good for him. I just don't think you would take both of these unless you really wanted to, but go for it. Summary, been playing a lot of bounty hunters. It's kind of been what's in my list for the most part, so I was excited to make this part of it. First and foremost, bounty's amazing. We'll just talk about the keyword for a second. Having the threat of a bounty on anything from a Imperial officer, Rebel officer, Clone Commander, T-Series, whatever it is, terrifying. On the other hand, having it on something like a Force user, maybe a little bit harder to get, but your opponent seriously reconsiders every strategy they usually do, times 2. If I'm playing a Force user and I have a bounty on me, I now have to consider the fact that I may give you up a victory point. Even if my Force user does great, destroys half your army, is winning me the objective, 1 bounty can win you the objective. Like, bounties are so good just because they give you a victory point. Especially in a game where they're few and far between. If you're playing something like key positions, it's like, okay, I got a bounty. I only need to hold my back position because I also put the bounty on a Jedi that was worth 175 points, even more probably. And now I have a victory point and kill points. That is going to win me this game. So this is just an example of like, if you're focusing down something like a Force user, sometimes you're like losing units to deflect and, you don't get necessarily anything out of it besides taking care of a threat and getting some kill points, but now you just add the bounty to that and it's that much better. And it's that much more devastating for your opponent to lose something like a Force user. Now the other side of things, if they have something super weak to that kind of shooting, like, I don't know, maybe Callus is a good example of, not just a generic officer. Those are obvious as why those are good bounty targets, but it's like, oh, he doesn't have immune to pierce at range, and he's like at 6 health, and he doesn't search defend, or doesn't have impervious, so it would really kill him, and he's got to be at range 3, so there's a lot of outplay in terms of that. And then things like a rebel officer, Boba, takes a couple turns to flank around, jumps out, 5 black dice, pew pew, independent aim, reroll, dead, bounty, win the game. It's great. Playmaking. All these bounty hunters, for the most part, have tools that they can use to outplay and do playmaking. So really good at objectives for the most part. Imagine Mandalorians on something like Bombing Run, IG-88 and IG-11 on intercept, shooting objectives for the most part, anything like that. Just really good. Because they can act independently, they don't necessarily have to be with their army. Some of them kind of want to be, but they can kind of go do whatever they need to do. The outplay part of it is like those cards, Electro Gauntlets, Whipcord Launcher, focused on the kill, are just going to allow you to get more out of these cheaper units in terms of fighting against things that are worth more points. And I just keep bringing up Force users, but that's the best thing I can tell you in terms of I'm threatening you with a bounty in terms of getting a victory point, and I have the tools able to stop you in your tracks and just kill you with a unit that maybe costs around half of what you do. Not quite half, a little bit more for sure, but that's why people play double bounties, because they can argue bringing 2 quote-unquote key pieces instead of 1 with something like Yoda. I can bring 2 bounty hunters for the price of Yoda. Can be very independent. Once again, double bounty. Underworld connections, just talk about this for a second. Because of the double bounty being kind of a really good mainstay, why have 1 when you can have 2? Just making sure you have a commander and that to allow you to bring both. So 5-point toll to do that is just the only reason I bring that up. Because you might want 5 points on something else? I don't know. It's really strong right now. I've played it in CIS, Scum, Empire, Rebels. It's fine. Sorry, Republic, I know. It's great. I love it. It allows me to outplay bigger, better units on the table for the most part. It's just a lot of fun as well, and you can always see the look on your opponent's face trying to decide what to do with what things, all because they have a little token that's worth 1 victory point on their character. It's a blast. And I feel like bounty hunters are one of those popular things in Star Wars that people love anyways, so if you're that person, these are your guys, and I think you can play any of them. I know I gave some higher rankings and some lower rankings, but for the most part, I think they're all strong. I don't know about amazing or OP, but they're all strong, just because of the bounty keyword alone. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Keep leaving criticism, keep leaving compliments, whatever you want to do. We're going to keep trying to do this weekly. We're going to move on to core units next, and I did just want to say this as a little disclaimer, is probably going to categorize all the core units by Galactic Civil War and Republic, so Rebels, Empire, and then Clones, Droids, just because there's not as many options. So we're going to keep doing this. Hope you guys are enjoying, so leave that feedback, like, and subscribe. You guys have a great day.